that the cases Director Kelly cited in support, they do not contend that the affidavit is directed at the criminally suspect. And they do not argue an affidavit submitted according to the requirements of the law would automatically subject anyone to criminal penalties. Those omissions are fatal to their claim, they say. Director Kelly next explained that the endorsement affidavit does not violate the privilege against self-incrimination because no one's compelled to submit one, they say. A person who refuses is not exposed to penalties on the basis alone. Plaintiffs point to emergency rules that they think provide otherwise, but the final rules effective February 8th, which is a month and 8 days after the January 1st deadline. But the final rules effective February 8th refer to penalties for possession of an assault weapon without having completed an electronic endorsement affidavit. In any event, an Illinois agency cannot use its rulemaking authority to rewrite or expand a statute. And it goes on to say that it is the act of possessing an assault weapon that exposes people to criminal penalties. Plaintiffs do not deny that a person who declines to submit an endorsement affidavit has viable alternatives to avoid liability for possession, nor do they take at any issue with the case law holding mere possession to speak in hopes of obtaining a benefit does not make the speech compelled. Again, these omissions are fatal to their claim. Finally, Director Kelly explained that the endorsement affidavit does not violate the privilege against self-incrimination because the information it contains does not present a real and substantial risk of incrimination. Plaintiffs do not deny their fears about traffic stops and targeting by police are, under the case law, merely trifling and imaginary and thus insufficient to invoke the privilege. Once more, these omissions are fatal to their claim. The plaintiffs have no response to any of Director Kelly's arguments, the state says. What do they have to say? Mostly they worry about hypothetical people who might submit endorsement affidavits after the deadline, January 1st. But the law provides anyone who wanted to continue possessing an assault weapon they owned on the statute's effective date must have submitted the affidavit prior to January 1st, 2024. But what if someone tries to submit an affidavit today or next month or next year? As plaintiffs see it, all a late registration does is admit the person filing saying committed a crime because any firearm not registered prior to January 1st, 2024 is illegal, period. Thus, they reason that the affidavit violates the privilege against self-incrimination, at least as to late registrations. The problem the plaintiff's state says is that they have not provided any evidence showing that they submitted or intend to submit untimely affidavits. To the contrary, the state says plaintiff's response insists that there's no benefit to registering at this point. As the Illinois State Police guidance attached to plaintiff's response makes clear, the deadlines are set by statutes and prosecutor may conclude a late submission is invalid or insufficient to exempt the affiant from criminal liability. Regardless, plaintiffs do not suggest, much less establish with evidence, that they have personally been injured due to submitting an untimely affidavit. Thus, they lack standing to pursue this claim on behalf of themselves. They continue on, the state says, and as the court recently reminded other plaintiffs in these consolidated cases, they cannot bring suit on behalf of hypothetical, unnamed Illinois citizens. To the contrary, under Article 3, a federal court may resolve only a real controversy with real impact on real persons. All right? Because federal courts do not adjudicate hypothetical or abstract disputes and do not possess a roving commission to publicly opine on every legal question, the court lacks jurisdiction to address plaintiffs' speculative concerns about hypothetical third parties who plaintiffs' own logic would have no reason to submit an untimely endorsement affidavit. Besides, the argument is meritless. Just as one was compelled to submit an endorsement affidavit before the deadline, no one's compelled to submit one after the deadline. Since Chief Justice Marshall first gave attention to the matter in the trial, Aaron Burr, all have agreed that a necessary element of compulsory self-incrimination is some kind of compulsion. But there's no compulsion here because a person who declines to submit an untimely endorsement affidavit is not risking serious punishment for refusing to do so. In fact, there is no penalty at all, the state says. Again, this is fatal to the plaintiff's claim. So it goes on to say that plaintiffs make 3 additional points that require quick correction, makes those points, then goes on to essentially say that this case should be dismissed. Plaintiffs have no response to Director Scully's arguments that a timely endorsement affidavit does not run afoul of the privilege against self-incrimination, and they have no right under Article 3 to prosecute hypothetical claims about untimely affidavits. For all those reasons, the court should grant Director Kelly's cross motion for summary judgment. So there you go. You've got this ongoing situation where the state even responding to the Langley plaintiffs' Fifth Amendment arguments in this case. That was another filing that was made on Friday. So again, for those of you who are watching live and you got kicked off, that's why we record these here locally, so we're able to get this out to you in short order. All right, so I appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and always more to come here with Bishop on Air. Violent crime across the state of Illinois, raising concern, not just in Chicago, but also in East St. Louis. And it's something that is also being compounded by the ongoing migrant crisis and concerns in Chicago, and even what's going to be on the ballot for voters in Chicago. Welcome back, Bishop on Air. I talked with William Kelly, Chicago reporter. We'll share that with you here in a moment. But here is what's happening in East St. Louis, where there was some violence that occurred. And the mayor there with the Bellevue News Democrat covering how they're going into a sort of, well, curfew.
We beg the young people to stop this unnecessary gun violence. Here in the city of East St. Louis, as the city manager stated, we have a zero tolerance for violence. Zero. And in testament to that zero violence, we're going to be instilling a curfew starting today. And that curfew will start at 12 p.m. It's all bars, businesses, public gatherings. The parks should be closed on Sundays, and that will be until further notice. We will continue to do more.
The mayor of East St. Louis, after violence there, going into a curfew, and he went on to say that they're going to be looking for some more funding as well. But if you look at the headlines, especially from the likes of the Chicago Tribune, for instance, you'll see just some of these headlines again. At least 4 people shot, 1 fatally in Chatham, 1 killed, 3 injured in a shooting in Rogers Park. Man 67 and woman 65 shot in Garfield Park. These are just in Chicago. Chicago Sun-Times also has similar headlines here with, if we can get past the asks for money here, some of these headlines. Second Chicago mass shooting leaves 3 dead, 1 wounded in the South Side. Officials identify man shot in a vacant Inglewood lot. Man in vehicle shot, wounded in Gold Coast. So those are just some of the things, again, causing concerns here. But when talking